Hey guys, welcome back. How's everybody doing? This is gonna be part 3 of how to create your own bloodline. I think this guy here, the reason why I pinned these guys up here is because I started thinking about the steps that you take and the directions you can take while you're creating your bloodlines. So the reason why I cooped those roosters up, that what you just saw was a radio, one of my radio cocks and a F-35 white zip tie, daughter of Vlad. Next important thing to talk about is on creating your bloodline. It's very important. You don't have to, but it's very important to create what's called a subline. You want to create a subline because down the road you can always use this to freshen up your bloodline. I'm not gonna add any other bloodline to that blood I'm working with. I'm working on my F-35 line or family with some genes that I got from my dad, and I've been trying to bring it back. I've been doing the back breeding. So the subline is very important. What you can do with a subline is, this is an example here. You'll have different variations coming out of what you're breeding. Now, I really like the way this rooster looks. This is the son, this is the offspring of another hen, of the sister of that hen that I have with Vlad. So I can, just an example, I'm keeping them just in case, backups. You never know, something could happen to Vlad or something could happen to the other hen. I'm gonna keep some of this bloodline too, just for backups. As soon as I start reproducing that black hen, his granddaughter, I can rest at ease, and I can be at rest to do something else with this guys here. But a subline is, you'll have different variations as you're working on your bloodline. If you're creating a bloodline, you'll have different colors, different characteristics. Different characteristics. You can increase those different characteristics. You can focus on those characteristics, and you can highlight those characteristics on the sublines. So you're always looking for the complete package, but some birds are always going to carry a little. They're going to be more dominant on particular on specific characteristics. If not the same, just a bit. If not a little bit, it could be a lot. But normally it'll be the same. So a subline would be, like I said, different variations, different characteristics, and you can start working on that. Example, this guy's here, little speckled station is pretty good too. These are all Vlad's descendants. So once you're working on this bloodline, let's say you create your subline, you line breed them, you do a little bit of inbreeding. Let's say I could line breed these guys here to the 4th generation, to the 8th generation, or to the 5th generation, whatever I think is best. And I do some inbreeding, and then I could go ahead. You can actually inbreed twice if you like, and it'll work on different times. You could inbreed them once, and then you could line breed them, and then you could inbreed them again, and then continue on with the line breeding. Eventually you're gonna have your blood's gonna be too tight, so you'll have to freshen up your blood, the subline and your other family. So you can do is freshen up the blood with this bloodline, which is still coming from the same family, still coming from the same genes. But let's say this here is your project F-35, and then over here you have the subline, which is this guy's here. You can run down the family tree as many generations, as many ways as you can, and you can do the same on this one. The further you get away from up here, the better, the more distant they are. See what I'm saying? But they're still the same family. They're still the same bloodline. And you bring them back. You can freshen up your bloodline. Let's say I grab the offspring of the brother and sister that I'm doing over here, and you add a little bit of the offspring from this guy's over here. You can grab the daughters, bring them back to this guy here. Grab the sons and bring them back to those girls on that side. That's how you infuse your birds with something from the same bloodline. So you don't necessarily gotta freshen up the blood from somebody else's birds. So sublines are very important. That's why when I recommended two families, I even think that's too much. Two strains of game birds. I think that's too much, but because you're gonna create different different pens, multiple pens. I mean, a lot of pens. In order for you to be able to create then the sublines, and then you can make as many sublines as you want. Let's say you grab 3 sublines and you highlight those characteristics, and then you could even, if you have 3 sublines or 4 sublines out of that same bloodline, and you keep them pure, each individual subline pure, and then you do hybrid vigor. You cross the offspring of those sublines within themselves, so you could get a quarter of this, a quarter of this, a quarter of this, a quarter of that, or half of this and half of that, and you're still going to activate your hybrid vigor. So you don't necessarily need to infuse blood from an outside source. You can see, back then a lot of people would bring in farms and ranches whenever they couldn't, and I'm talking about places where rural places, people they'll bring a chicken and they'll take it to this ranch over here. Like, for example, you'll have like, okay, so let's say John lives on this side of the farm, on this side of the country, and then in the country, in the same area, right, you got John and you got Juan over here. And then John comes and tells Juan, here, I'm gonna drop off some birds, breed them. And Juan goes and breeds these birds, and then he keeps those birds, and then John goes on and gives some to Pedro on this side, same bloodline, keeps them, and then he goes to Pedro, gets a little bit of that bloodline to freshen up his bloodline, and then he goes on to Juan and gets a little bit of that bloodline and freshens up that bloodline. That's how they would do it back then. They'll just kind of be like, oh, this person has, and they'll show their birds and be like, oh, this person has this person has this characteristic, and this person has this characteristic, so I'm gonna use this characteristic and this characteristic. But it was all the same. It was all the same birds, same bloodline. Recently, people started adding all kinds of stuff because the way that communication evolved, and transportation and all that. But before, that's how they would do it. And I've heard stories of how they would do it back then. So, you can you don't necessarily need to add any outside blood. Sorry, I'm just over here doodling on the ground. You don't necessarily got to add outside blood. That's the importance of sublines. You're pretty much using the same birds, and you're keeping them in different areas, not in different areas, I mean different pens, and you're keeping up with them. Make sure you just mix them, you keep them pure, keep each subline pure, and then you can mix them amongst themselves and they'll work. Sublines are very important. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.